What does like a blocked shipping lane in the Middle East have to do with a canceled cloud server upgrade over in Europe?
Right, yeah. Sounds like a stretch. We usually compartmentalize this stuff, like geopolitics over here, tech over there.
Exactly. It makes processing all this heavy global news so much easier if we just assume that, an event on the other side of the planet doesn't immediately crash into our daily routines.
Yeah, but that compartmentalization, it's basically an illusion.
It totally is. And
Yeah.
that is exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are so thrilled you're here with us.
Absolutely.
So our mission today is to untangle this massive web of cause and effect from a really dense intelligence drop. This is Global Briefing number 23, dated Friday, April 17th, 2026.
And it is packed.
Seriously packed. We're going to look at how these massive international events instantly ripple outward, right? Like impacting your digital infrastructure, the global workforce, and even, honestly, your personal cybersecurity.
But just a quick note before we really jump in. The source material we're looking at covers some highly sensitive, actively unfolding geopolitical conflicts.
Right. Very politically charged stuff.
Exactly. So we want to be super clear with you. Our purpose here is not to weigh in on the politics or, take sides at all.
Yeah, we're just reporting the facts and the events exactly as they appear in the briefing. Just trying to help map out those shockwaves across the global economy.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's start with the physical stress tests happening right now. The briefing outlines 3 major global choke points triggering all at once.
Right, a sort of perfect storm.
Yeah. First, there's this really fragile U.S.-brokered 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. And the terms are hotly contested.
Very hotly.
Like Netanyahu has publicly stated that Israeli troops will remain in southern Lebanon for the time being. But then Hezbollah insists that any ceasefire has to mean 0 Israeli presence, asserting their right to resist. And, there are already reports of intermittent shelling.
Right, so it's incredibly tense.
Super tense. Second choke point. A massive Russian aerial barrage on Ukraine. We're talking nearly 700 drones and missiles hitting civilian areas.
Yeah, the human cost there is devastating.
It is. 16 people killed, over 100 injured, and power grids across multiple cities are heavily damaged.
And then there's the third one.
Right. The Strait of Hormuz is operating at near closure capacity.
And that third point, that is the linchpin for global logistics. The Strait of Hormuz is the main maritime route for Middle Eastern oil and refined products.
So the way I picture it, the strait is like this blocked artery in the global body, right?
That's a good way to look at it.
And it's obvious how a blocked artery affects the heart. Like gas prices go up. But the briefing draws a direct line from this maritime choke point to tech rollouts in Europe. And I'm really struggling to connect the dots between Middle Eastern shipping lanes and a European data center.
It's crazy, right? But the connection is actually commercial aviation.
Wait, really? Like passenger planes?
Yeah, exactly. So the International Energy Agency, the IEA, just issued this severe warning. Europe basically has only about 6 weeks of jet fuel supply left if traffic through the strait doesn't go back to normal.
6 weeks? That's nothing.
Right, because 75% of Europe's jet fuel imports come straight through that specific region. Prices have already doubled. And because of that, the CEO of Ryanair is projecting a 5 to 10% cancellation rate for all their summer flights.
Okay, wow. So flights get canceled, European tourism takes a hit. I get that. But tech companies don't exactly fly their server racks in first class on Ryanair?
No, they don't fly them in the cabin, but they do fly them underneath.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, the industry calls it belly cargo. So a massive chunk of the world's high-value tech, hardware like silicon chips, network switches, all the physical backbone stuff for cloud computing, it doesn't actually travel on dedicated freight planes like FedEx.
Wait, so it's just sitting under people's luggage on a regular passenger jet?
Exactly. So when you slash passenger flight schedules by 10% just to conserve jet fuel, you instantly sever the freight capacity for cloud providers.
Oh, wow. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, these hyperscalers, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they rely on just-in-time manufacturing. If their new data center in Frankfurt needs components air freighted from Taiwan, a lack of jet fuel means that supply chain just completely halts.
That is wild. The virtual cloud is literally anchored to the reality of physical jet fuel.
Yep. It's all connected.
Okay, so the briefing also highlights that Lebanon's ceasefire, and again, it's not just about the political maneuvering. The source material points out that telecom operators see this 10-day window as a critical infrastructure race.
Right, because cross-border fiber routes and undersea cable landing stations are sitting right in the strike zones.
And physical cables require, physical maintenance.
Exactly. When a region loses backhaul power or fiber lines are severed by shelling, displaced populations completely lose their mobile internet access.
Which is horrible, because without mobile data, how do you even coordinate humanitarian aid?
You basically can't. It's nearly impossible. So telecom workers literally have to use these brief 10-day pauses in the conflict to physically rush into contested areas, splice the damaged fiber optic cables, and get the connectivity restored before the hostilities start back up.
That's incredibly dangerous work.
Yeah.
So physical infrastructure is obviously vulnerable to the collateral damage there. But then the Russian strikes on Ukraine show infrastructure being actively, systematically targeted.
Right, and it's not just the physical bombing of substations anymore.
Yeah, I noticed the briefing mentions CISA, the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, along with European certs, issuing all these fresh warnings.
They're issuing them because kinetic warfare is now permanently tied to digital warfare.
Okay, meaning what exactly?
Meaning a large-scale aerial barrage is almost always paired with a coordinated cyber offensive. The goal isn't just to physically blow up the power plant. The goal is to breach the SCADA systems. Yeah, supervisory control and data acquisition. Basically, it's the industrial software that translates a digital command into a physical action. Like, opening a water valve or flipping a high voltage switch.
Okay. So the attackers are trying to digitally lock the operators out of whatever grid machinery actually survives the physical bombing.
Precisely. And because European managed service providers often share network architectures or logistics software with Ukrainian entities, those cyber attacks regularly spill right over the border.
Wow. So we've got physical supply chains stalling, shipping lanes freezing, fiber cables under fire. The physical world just feels incredibly constrained right now.
It really does. It's bottleneck after bottleneck.
But then, when the briefing pivots to the virtual world, it's like a staggering contrast. The AI sector is accelerating so fast, it's almost hard to wrap my head around the metrics.
It's moving at breakneck speed.
Right. So Stanford just released their 2026 AI index, and the bombshell takeaway is that China has effectively erased the U.S.'s historical lead in artificial intelligence.
Which is remarkable, honestly. Just a couple of years ago, that gap seemed completely insurmountable.
Yeah. Like in May 2023, the gap between the top U.S. model and the top Chinese model was over 1,300 points on the ARENA scores.
And for anyone listening who isn't familiar, ARENA scores are essentially blind taste tests for AI. Human judges prompt two anonymous models and then vote on which gives the better answer.
Right, it creates this massive crowdsourced leaderboard. But today, Anthropic's top U.S. model, which is Claude Opus 4.6, leads China's best model by a razor-thin margin, just 2.7%.
The mechanisms of how China caught up are really fascinating, actually. It wasn't just them throwing more compute power at the wall.
Really? How did they do it?
Well, Chinese developers got highly adept at leveraging open-weights models like Meta's Llama series, for example, and then just ruthlessly optimizing their training runs. Plus, the talent pipeline in the U.S. is facing a severe bottleneck.
Oh yeah, the briefing noted that the number of international AI researchers relocating to the U.S. has plummeted 89% since 2017.
That's a massive brain drain, or, well, lack of brain gain.
Yeah, 89% is huge. But despite that talent drop, the domestic U.S. labs are still pushing some crazy boundaries. Like, Anthropic just released Claude Opus 4.7.
Right, and the benchmarks on that are wild.
They really jump off the page. It scored 79.5% on visual navigation without using any external tools.
Which is up from, what, 57% in the last version?
Exactly. And it's autonomously fixing complex software code now. It uses these massive context windows to ingest entire code bases all at once, finding architectural bugs that older models couldn't even perceive.
And look, that technical achievement is undeniably impressive. But the downstream effect of that capability is causing massive friction in the labor market right now.
Okay, I'm really glad you brought that up, because it's so easy to get caught up in this Silicon Valley hype cycle, right?
No, definitely.
We hear terms like massive context windows or 79% visual navigation, and I'm always wondering, okay, what does this actually mean for the human workforce?
Yeah.
Like, is this just engineers bragging about benchmark scores on Twitter, or is this actually hitting the mainstream economy?
It is hitting the economy right now, and it is ruthless.
Okay, give me an example.
Well, the briefing highlights this situation at Snap, the social media company. Their CEO recently called this a crucible moment for the industry.
A crucible moment. That sounds intense.
It is. Snap just laid off 1,000 employees. That's 16% of its entire full-time workforce.
Wow.
And the stated reason wasn't a lack of revenue or a broader economic downturn. They explicitly said that AI advancements are allowing their remaining staff to automate repetitive coding and management work.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
1,000 jobs eliminated entirely by efficiency gains.
Yep. And the financial markets rewarded them for it instantly. By cutting those roles, Snap projects over $500 million in annualized savings by the second half of 2026.
That's insane.
Wall Street drove their stock up 7% on the news alone. So AI has fundamentally transitioned. It's no longer this experimental R&D phase. It's an immediate driver of corporate profitability.
Okay, so it's wiping out repetitive desk work. But AI is also leaving the desktop entirely, right? It's entering the physical environment and bypassing human input altogether.
Yes, the intersection of AI and the physical world is accelerating.
Like this startup in the briefing, Wave. They just secured $60 million from major chip makers AMD, ARM, Qualcomm. That pushed their valuation to $8.6 billion.
Right, and their core pitch is mapeless self-driving tech.
Mapeless. So historically, companies like Waymo have relied on these pre-programmed high-definition maps, right? Like telling the car exactly where every stop sign and curb is.
Right, down to the centimeter.
But Wave uses end-to-end neural networks.
Exactly. They are completely removing those rigid programming constraints.
The best analogy I can think of is like teaching a teenager to drive.
Yeah.
You don't hand a 16-year-old a topographical map of every single pothole in the city.
Right, that would be ridiculous.
You let them watch traffic, understand the physics of a moving vehicle, and then you just toss them the keys. Wave's AI learns to drive purely from visual data, processing the environment in real time without a map.
And Nissan is already planning to integrate this tech into their consumer cars by 2027.
Which is right around the corner. But here's the thing. If an AI is smart enough to navigate a complex physical intersection with no map and capable enough to replace 1,000 tech workers at Snap,
Yeah, we have to talk about what happens when malicious actors get hold of those exact same autonomous capabilities.
Exactly. The cybersecurity section of this briefing is terrifying. It outlines threats that operate on a totally different scale than what we saw even 2 years ago.
Let's look at the infrastructure flaws first.
Okay. There is this critical vulnerability currently being actively exploited in something called Ceasefire, and it carries a CVSS score of 9.8.
And just for context, a CVSS 9.8 is the highest possible critical severity score a vulnerability can get.
Right. It's practically a perfect 10 of bad news.
The vulnerability is known in the community as MCPU. And Jingsui is a widely used graphical interface that system admins use to manage web servers.
Okay, so how does the flaw work?
It exists in how the software authenticates users for a new integration. Conceptually, think of it like the software built 2 doorways to reach the core controls of the server.
Okay, 2 doorways.
The first doorway requires secure login credentials. The second doorway, due to a coding oversight, literally just does not check for an ID.
Wait, I am always baffled by this. How does a completely unauthenticated doorway make it into production software?
Well, it usually happens when developers patch new features onto legacy code bases. In this case, they added a model context protocol, but didn't check how the new code interacted with the old security protocols.
Unbelievable.
So attackers can just send a single unauthenticated command through that open doorway, push a malicious configuration file, and boom, they gain total control over the server.
Just walk right in without a password. Okay, so that's the infrastructure side. But while the admins are fighting server takeovers, everyday users are facing their own automated threats. Researchers caught 108 malicious Chrome browser extensions recently, with over 20,000 active installs.
And these weren't just showing annoying ads.
No, they were quietly extracting Google Oath tokens and hijacking Telegram web sessions, and then sending that data to a Russian malware-as-a-service operation every 15 seconds.
Which is devastating. And for anyone listening, an oath token is basically the digital master key that gets created when you click login with Google on some third-party site.
Right. If a hacker steals that token, they bypass your password and your two-factor authentication entirely.
But here's the kicker. Stealing session tokens still requires the user to make a mistake, like downloading that bad extension.
Sure.
The next generation of cybercrime relies on fully automated AI platforms that don't wait for you to make a mistake.
Oh, man. This brings us to ATHR.
Yeah, ATHR.
So ATHR is this new software platform currently selling on underground hacking forums. And the price tag is $4,000.
Plus a 10% cut of any profits generated.
Right. which is just wild. It's like a cybercrime in a box franchise.
Yeah.
And it provides end-to-end automation for voice phishing, spoofing, and credential harvesting, targeting sites like Google and Coinbase.
The phrase end-to-end automation is the terrifying part here. An attacker literally doesn't need any coding skills. They just type a target's name and phone number into ATHR.
And then what? The AI just takes over.
Exactly. The AI autonomously synthesizes a voice clone of a trusted entity, maybe your bank or your IT department. It dials the phone, holds a real-time convincing conversational dialogue with the target, directs them to a perfectly spoofed logging page that it generated on the fly.
Oh my God.
Intercepts the two-factor authentication code the target types in, and logs into the real account. The human operator just clicks a button, sits back, and watches it happen.
That barrier to entry is basically zero. If a low-skill operator can buy this franchise for $4,000 and run attacks that used to require a whole coordinated team of social engineers, how do we even defend against that?
Well, the briefing notes that Anthropic has a safety model called Mythos that autonomously discovered thousands of high-severity software bugs.
Oh, right. But they delayed the public release, didn't they?
Yeah.
It's currently being secretly tested inside JPMorgan Chase.
Yes. And the delay of that Mythos model perfectly highlights the ultimate cybersecurity paradox right now.
Fighting fire with fire.
Exactly. The underlying architecture that allows Anthropic's Claude to autonomously fix code is the exact same architecture that makes it exceptional at finding vulnerabilities.
Right, it's a double-edged sword.
If Mythos is handed thousands of zero-day flaws, meaning bugs, the software vendors don't even know exist yet. Releasing that model publicly before patches are created is essentially publishing a treasure map to the internet's weakest points.
It's a weapon of mass disruption if it falls into the wrong hands. So they lock it inside a highly regulated, secure enterprise environment like JP Morgan to figure out how to safely deploy it defensively.
We absolutely need AI to defend against automated AI attacks like ATHR. But releasing an offensive, capable security AI recklessly, that does way more harm than good.
Wow. Okay, so we've mapped out some massive global forces so far. Shipping lanes, European fuel shortages, automated hacking franchises, tech layoffs. I want to trace these macroeconomic events all the way down to the local level, specifically the education system.
It all trickles down.
It really does. So if the Strait of Hormuz is blocked, European jet fuel prices spike. Well, jet fuel and diesel are refined from the same distillates, and they move in the exact same price basket.
So a spike in global jet fuel means a simultaneous spike in local diesel prices across the U.S.
Exactly. So suddenly, a local school district's transportation budget for diesel school buses is under severe immediate strain.
And what happens? The district is forced to reallocate funds just to keep the buses running, which usually means cutting technology budgets or extracurricular programs.
And the tech impact hits the classroom in other ways, too. Think about a high school career counselor looking at those snap layoffs. They have to fundamentally change how they advise students.
Absolutely. When 1,000 jobs are cut because AI is handling the repetitive coding, telling a student to just pursue basic computer science feels totally inadequate.
And the debate over how to handle this in schools is fracturing wildly. Like the briefing talks about Northern Virginia, Fairfax and Prince William counties are leaning into the curve. They're piloting ChatGPT for teachers, trying to integrate vetted AI into the daily workflow.
Right. But then, directly next door, Loudoun County strictly restricts AI to district-approved tools.
Yeah, the chief technology officer for Loudoun County framed their approach so perfectly.
Right.
They compared using their lockdown platforms to swimming with a lifeguard, whereas using unvetted public models is swimming at your own risk.
That's a great analogy.
It really is. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, in Washington state, the Peninsula School District is pioneering something called vibe coding.
Vibe coding.
Yeah. They're using AI coding assistants to build their own small internal apps in-house. Their goal is to entirely eliminate third-party educational tech vendor costs by the next school year.
Wow.
It's like a school deciding to stop buying bread from the bakery and using AI to bake their own bread to save money.
Which, look, from a budgetary standpoint, creating custom software in-house without hiring a whole developer team is incredibly resourceful.
Oh, totally.
But from a cybersecurity governance standpoint, it is an absolute nightmare.
Right. My immediate thought was about maintenance. If a single staffer vibes an app into existence using AI and then gets a new job and leaves, who maintains that code base?
Nobody maintains it. That's the problem. When a district buys software from an established vendor, they aren't just buying the app. They're paying for continuous security patching and institutional knowledge.
So an unpatched home-baked school app sitting on a server is just a sitting duck.
It's a prime target for automated scanning platforms like ATHR or that MCP vulnerability we talked about. And the legislative branch is finally realizing this can't be ignored.
Yeah, the briefing said there are currently 52 AI in education bills moving through 25 different state legislatures.
Like Oklahoma, they just enacted a mandate requiring every single school district to implement a comprehensive written AI policy by the 2027-28 school year.
And while school boards and states are scrambling just to establish basic AI governance, the underlying compute layer of the internet is shifting all over again.
The quantum leap.
Exactly. The briefing details this massive surge in the quantum computing market. Stocks for companies like D-Wave jumped nearly 16%, and IonQ surged 18% after they announced they successfully scaled their commercial systems beyond a single processor.
And that detail multiprocessor quantum workloads, that is the tipping point for global data security.
Why is that the tipping point?
Because traditional encryption, the math that protects everything from your bank account to those vulnerable school district servers, relies on the fact that multiplying two massive prime numbers together is easy, but factoring the result back into the original primes is practically impossible for a regular computer.
Right, it would take a classical computer thousands of years.
Exactly, but a quantum computer doesn't process information sequentially.
It evaluates all the probabilities at once, right?
Yep. Using Shor's algorithm, a powerful enough quantum computer can crack that prime number encryption in seconds.
Seconds, wow.
So for IT leaders, whether in government, finance, or education, migrating to post-quantum cryptography, meaning new encryption methods that are resistant to quantum attacks, it's no longer just science fiction. It is an immediate operational necessity.
Man, we have waded through an immense amount of heavy material today. We unpacked geopolitical gridlock, supply chain fragility, school budget crises, automated cyber warfare, and AI aggressively disrupting the labor force.
It's a lot.
It's very easy to read this briefing and feel entirely overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the challenges. However, the final item in the source material ends on a profoundly uplifting note.
It really serves as a necessary reminder of humanity's capacity for complex problem solving.
It really does. So the 4 astronauts of the Artemis II, Mission Reed-Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen, splashed down safely off the coast of San Diego.
A massive success.
Huge. They successfully completed the first crewed lunar flyby since the Apollo 17 mission in 1972. They set a new human distance record, traveling over 252,000 miles from Earth.
And they captured, what, 7,000 images?
7,000 images, including this incredible perspective of a solar eclipse viewed from the Orion spacecraft as the moon passed in front of the sun. And notably, this was the most diverse crew in history to travel beyond low Earth orbit. First person of color, first woman, and first non-U.S. citizen to make the journey.
When you view the Artemis mission against the backdrop of everything else we discussed today, it offers this really striking contrast.
Yeah, how so?
Well, despite the fragile supply chains, the terrestrial wars, the relentless pace of technological disruption, we still possess the ability to execute flawlessly on the grandest scales of exploration. We engineered the launch, navigated the cosmos, and brought the crew home safely.
We brought them home safe. And that actually leaves me with one final thought for you to mull over today. Throughout this deep dive, we examined how machines are rapidly mastering the routines of our daily lives. AI is automating the code we write, it's driving the cars we sit in, and it's even executing the cyber attacks we defend against.
Right, they're conquering the known.
Exactly. The artificial systems are conquering the known and the measurables here on Earth. But as we watch the Artemis' second crew return from the far side of the moon, it raises a really profound question. As machines take over the complex but predictable tasks of our world, will the true value of being human shift entirely toward doing what hasn't been done yet, venturing boldly into the absolute unknown?
That frontier remains the one space no algorithm can map for us.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's deep dive. Stay informed, stay curious, and we will catch you next time.